Welcome to Whiskey One, folks. We are in the studio, and today we're going to do a little something different. Got a little Whiskey Rants episode number 2. I have Nick in the house.
How's it going?
And of course, John Kay.
How you doing?
Good to see you guys. So today we're going to talk a little Remus. A little bit of MGP. We have a few Remuses that we're gonna taste, but we're gonna talk through them. This won't really be a review as much as it is a chat or a talk with all of you guys watching. So just interested to see what you guys' thoughts are on the Remuses that we have here today, and a little bit about MGP, and also what our thoughts are about the fact that MGP is now having competition with other major distillers that are sourcing their products to startup brands and craft distillers as well, and what that means for all of us that are whiskey enthusiasts. So let's get started. I think we have a Remus.
The first one's going to be the regular entry level, the 94 proof Remus. Should be able to get it pretty much everywhere. It's not a store pick, nothing hard to get.
Yeah, so we're going to start out with low proof going into the high proof. And you could hear that.
That was a good pour.
That was a good pour. All right, that one's yours, John. Let me get your glass here.
Perfect. Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like a sub $40 bottle most everywhere, ain't it? $35.
Yeah, so this Remus is available. I want to say everywhere. I can't really speak to all the states, but Remus being an MGP product, you're likely to find it almost everywhere.
It's their flagship product. I'm pretty sure it's available everywhere.
Yeah. Oh man, so what are you guys getting on this?
It's just a good classic bourbon.
Yeah, classic MGP. So you're going to probably hear me say that a few times because you do get a lot of MGP distillate in a lot of brands and products. So whether that be, a Ross Squibb product or, something that's specifically labeled Remus, if you pay attention to the back of the labels, take a look at where it says it's distilled. Now, it's not often that you're going to see distilled and bottled by the same company. You're going to see distilled maybe in Indiana, and that's a key indicator that it is an MGP sourced whiskey. Now, I keep saying MGP. It's probably a bad habit that I need to break out of, because most of us know what we're talking about when we say MGP, right? Midwest Grain Spirits, or Midwest Grain Products, MGP, is now Ross Squibb. But MGP just sort of rolls off the tongue a little.
Well,
easier.
so MGP is still the parent company. Ross Squibb is like the bourbon.
Yep.
The bourbon side of MGP.
Yeah, so if you hear me saying MGP or Ross Squibb, we're talking about one and the same thing, essentially. Kind of like Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare. It's a Buffalo Trace product, but I know what you're talking about, right?
Yep.
All right, so what do you guys think so far?
I'm getting like a sweet black licorice on the nose.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
Real licoricey.
So what is the traditional mash bill on MGP? Do you guys know?
I do not.
I think there's
it's a high rye. It's a high rye. Yeah. It's and you guys are going to school me on the comment section because I didn't actually look it up before we had this chat. So it's somewhere in the 60s. I want to say like 64, 65-ish is corn, and it's like 25, maybe up to 27% rye, and then a small amount of malt.
Yeah. So the other bottle, the pick we have, actually has the
mash bill
on it.
Gotcha.
So,
gotcha.
And that, I believe, because that is just the new Ross Squibb Remus bottle, I believe that is going to be like their standard mash bill. But they actually do have a couple different mash bills that they're starting to release in their bottles now, I think. And that's why they're putting the mash bills on them.
Mm-hmm.
Are they changing all of the labels to that new label, or is it just for like store picks or barrel picks, or is it an update?
I think it's an update because at Latitudes they have not just that store pick, but they also then have the new bottles.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So quick shout out to Latitudes and the folks from Latitudes. It's a local liquor store here in Albuquerque. I love to frequent Latitudes. And the reason I'm going to give them a quick shout out is towards the end, we are going to get into their barrel pick. These guys have already gotten into it, so I'm pretty sure they're enthusiastic to get to that. But we are saving that one last because it's the highest proof of the Remus that we're going to try today. And another reason I'm going to do a quick shout out is you guys watching probably have your favorite local liquor stores. And right now, Latitudes is mine just because I feel like they treat their customers right. They're fair. When they get their allocated bottles in, they're not just hoarding it and giving it just to like one or two customers or hoarding it for themselves or even like jacking up the price about 4 or 5 times or greater. They're actually doing it at a fair price. They also do something called a lottery, a bourbon lottery. And so towards, the latter part of the year, which I think we're getting close to it, maybe.
Yeah, it'll be at the end of the year.
At the end of the year. Yeah. Essentially, they'll send out an email and you literally get to see full transparency. Everybody that's spent the highest is top of the list and then going all the way down the list. So you kind of see like where you're going to be able to pick.
Yeah, there's
an
it's a
allocated
draft.
There it is,
Yeah,
a bourbon draft, right?
Yeah.
And
Total Wine does the lottery, and it's it's like you can spend all the points there, and you get into the top picks, and then you get screwed every other time with nothing, and then it's like then they'll give you something okay, and then maybe every third or fourth time they'll give you one of your top picks.
Those Blandons.
But that's where I've gotten all my Blandons was from Total Wine, kind of like. Cast giveaways like here
right.
That's a consolidatory prizes.
Yeah, and that's so weird that Bland's has become that, right?
It's still very sought after, but for us like
is.
nerds, it's kind of like okay, I got my letters, and now it's like it's donation bottles and stuff to trade with other people.
Yeah, and I have a few already, and Bland's is Bland's. It's a good solid bourbon, but in your journey, you're going to experience a whole lot of great, solid bourbon that is not hard to find. It's at a respectable price, or at least an accessible price that you can afford without worrying about, like, did I overpay for this thing? So I don't want to knock Bland's. It's just a really cool bottle. Everybody seems to, like, go after it, and it is what it is. Like, you're always going to have people playing favorites, but... the reason I just kind of went to this whole bourbon draft concept is there's a lot of transparency behind it and a lot of fairness. So even the prices that are offered for those that, they get their selection, I think every person I've talked to has talked about just how fair that is. And I bring it up because I really wish that more liquor stores, and not necessarily your local liquor stores, but just liquor stores in general, would stop the allocated prices. And there's an argument to be made about that. Folks talk about, there's people that are going to buy that bottle at retail and then they're just going to flip it. And the flippers are the ones that are kind of ruining the whiskey experience for those of us that just really want to buy that bottle to enjoy it. And I get that. But at the same time, you're almost making the situation worse. Yeah. So you could say that
they're driving the price up because what's happening now is you're starting to see it. Wild Turkey's caught on. The manufacturers are raising their price on the bottles.
Right.
And they're like, oh well, shoot, if you're gonna buy this at the $80 we sold it at and sold it for $300, well then we're just gonna sell it for $200.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, which brings up a good point, and that is something I want us to talk about, and that is, as I gotten older, they say things like, 40 is the new 20, or 50 is the new 30, so on and so forth. One of the things I want to hit on is, what is the price of a great or even a good, decent, solid whiskey supposed to be? Is $100 now the new 30, the new 20, right? Because, excuse me, when I was growing up, and we're sort of getting off track here a little bit, but Jim Beam, white label, your Jack Daniel's Old No. 7, so on and so forth, those bottles were usually like less than $10, right? And if you spent 20, That was a lot. And I think, of course I was a whole lot younger then, but when you spent 20 to 25, you were saying something, you were making a statement, you showed up to the party, like you're a big shot, right? But now I feel like $20 on a whiskey is laughable. And it's not necessarily that it's a bad whiskey, but you can almost expect that to be subpar, right? If you come in with the $80 bottle, or you're looking on the shelves and you see the prices are at $80, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a solid whiskey. But I've seen.
Well, you certainly have higher expectations.
Well, maybe I do. Yeah.
Sometimes it's almost the same as the $20
Yeah.
in a different bottle.
Yes.
Fancier.
Because honestly, you're talking about, I think this is a great whiskey right here. We're sipping on this. It says it's a great bourbon. This is everything you want in it. It's sweet. It's flavorful. It's got plenty of punch, but it's sippable. I really like this, and this is just
what's the retail on it?
Like I said, it's like $35 or
30, 35
Right around there, 30.
35?
I've seen it up to 40, 39 maybe.
Right. So this is, I hate to say this, but this is going to like within the topic or the mentality that I'm talking about. Is this now the new $7 bottle? Right?
No, I mean this is certainly better than Old Number 7 or just Jim Beam White Label.
Right.
This will blow those out of the water. So I think those are still bottom shelf things are still bottom shelf things. I think the issue is the gap between the bottom shelf and all the other products is widening.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, 20 years ago, before this big craze took over, the reason, talk about like George T. Stagg sitting on the shelves, Pappy sitting on the shelves, right? At retail,
Right.
it is because people weren't interested in it, and so all the bottles were cheaper.
Right.
But now everything's getting more expensive because there's more interest in it. The cheaper bottles are still the same price.
Yeah.
And I think people are moving away from buying the lower tier stuff. And that's why Brown-Forman posted a loss last quarter, in my opinion, is, people aren't drinking less. They're just moving away from, constant heavy drinking and moving more towards, craft spirits and sipping and enjoying the bourbons. Right, and seeing what's there besides just doing the shots of whatever, right?
Yep.
And so when you're doing shots, you obviously drink more alcohol. But if you're sipping booze, you are paying more for stuff, but you're drinking less, right? And so they may
more
see
refined drinking.
Yeah, so they may see declining sales.
It is. Yeah, no, it is.
The amount of bottles they were because they're guys aren't sitting around doing shots all the time. Guys are now sitting around sipping. Right, we're buying more expensive stuff, but the volume we're buying is less.
That's interesting because, when I was younger, drinking whiskey to me in my mind was a practice of you pour a shot and you took the shot. You
or you put it in a Coke.
Or yes, you put it in a mixed drink. So I guess the mentality when you're young is okay. I'm here to get jacked up. Give me a shot, give me a double, and we're pounding these. And as I've gotten older and whiskey has gotten better, I will say that whiskey's gotten a whole lot better, and there's also a whole lot more variety and selection these days than there used to be. Now, like we're all sort of acclimated to becoming refined. Like we are looking for something better. We are looking to take our time and drink good stuff. Right? It's not about getting jacked up.
And so many more people are making whiskey in different parts of the country. A lot more flavors. You can experience a lot of different stuff with anything from the climate to the water. All the stuff people are doing all over the country is giving us a lot more selection.
Yeah.
We don't have to stay bottled into only buying
It's not just Kentucky
the
bourbon.
main brands, Kentucky bourbon.
We got Washington, Oregon. It's got a lot of good stuff coming out of New York, Michigan. A lot of different regions of bourbon coming out.
No, go ahead.
I think that was actually with Remus, them bottling and selling their old product instead of MGP sourcing it all out.
Yeah.
Or I think it was good timing because with other people now sourcing and distributing some of their product to other people to bottle, for them to start releasing their own, and I would imagine some of their best stuff. I think the timing was actually right for them to make their own name.
That's a good point, because
as other
MGP
people are as we're talking about, more people are starting to offer contract distilling. MGP might have saw a loss in business on the contract distilling side.
Yeah.
And they have all this great bourbon. They're like, oh, hey, great, let's throw our label on it. We see everyone else, Penelope, New New Old Oak, all these brands just basically, and they're not just rebottling, because all the great brands that are doing it, they are putting it in different barrels, and they're doing different barreling techniques and toasted barrels and IR toasting and all the different experimental things they're doing with the pre-aged MGP or just pre-distilled. And other people, they use it as a jumping off point to start their own company.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder something, right? As we're talking about MGP and all the things that MGP has done over the last 2 decades or more, did they do themselves a disservice? Did they shoot themselves in the foot by perhaps, allocating or resourcing out their best whiskeys? Some of the stuff that, like, if they would have just maybe bottled it themselves or just sort of hoarded it for themselves,
I don't think
they would have had something special.
They've let out their best to other people. I think.
Do you think it was just garbage that they were giving out?
No, certainly not. I think they were being fair with people. I think they, from what I've heard, they offer people the barrels. They offer people distilling. If you contract through them, they let you, pick, what's available. But
do you think they were holding back though the good stuff?
No, I think they certainly started pricing the good stuff certain ways, because there are certain companies out there, just straight bottling companies, that are buying aged MGP and just bottling it and charging very high prices. You can find some 20-year MGP out there right now, some for very high prices.
And it is 20-year. I mean,
right. And some stuff is older. And so but an MGP just knows, like, hey, this is the price. If you want it, you can have it. If not, we're going to hold on to it and maybe do something with it, or hold on to it, for someone else, because they know what they have, but they also are making tons more. So I think they're fair about it. Did they shoot themselves in the foot? I don't think so. I think they know who they are, right? They are, they're like a what are those, like like the communities where, like, people, like, build their companies there, right? They're like
almost like a template.
Yeah,
a foundation?
Yeah, kind of like a template, but, like, they understand that they, like, help other companies start, right?
Oh,
People come to them
to
source, and they know those people are going to be with them for a little bit and either sell themselves to someone bigger, or start their own distillery company.
Yeah, right? I guess a better way to maybe frame it is more of a mentor.
Yes, exactly. Right? And for everyone that either goes off and starts their own distillery or sells to someone else for billions, that's just another feather in the cap for MGP to sell to the next guy. That wants to contract distill with them.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
I think they actually built a reputation. So once they released things, people already knew what to expect. They were known for high quality stuff, and they were able to release their own, and people were like, oh, that's MGP.
Yeah, I agree. So Nick hit up on a great note. In my opinion, was sort of the dominant note, like nose in it, and that was like a licorice, a heavy anise aroma to it. But I'm getting a lot of that brown sugar, almost like rum brown sugar, where there's some of those spices that come with a rum.
Yeah, like raisin. Like a bit of raisin and plum.
I can see that.
Just like a little bit of it sitting on top of that licorice.
Yeah. Good amount of baking spices. You pick up the cinnamon, the what's that note? Clove. You get a little clove to it. Not a lot of vanilla. That's it. Allspice. It's always on the tip of my tongue, but it's allspice that I'm getting.
I like allspice.
It's spicy though,
A
right?
little bit of allspice and like everything.
Yes. A lot of bourbons have a good, like either clove or allspice, or at least those with MGP in it.
Mm-hmm.
Not really getting any vanilla or cherry
No,
or any of
no.
those other traditional bourbon notes.
Yeah, it's not very fruity, is it?
Mm-mm.
If anything, it's just got that sugar sweetness, that you get from brown sugar that kind of feels like a rum, honestly. Does Remus put a lot of age statements or any age statements in some of their flagship whiskeys? Do you guys happen to know?
On their flagship stuff, yes.
So, like this one, does it have an age statement?
No, on the standard Remus bottles, I do not believe. It may say on there it's a straight bourbon. So
Straight bourbon, which is 4 years,
Yeah.
right?
At least 4. So that's what I'm guessing. What's in there is between 4 and 6 years. Is just from the
Okay.
taste on it.
Yeah.
We're not getting a lot of the super dark fruits. Not a whole lot of wood influence. There's definitely wood influence, but it's not like years and years of it.
And this is, so I don't know if we mentioned it, but the standard George Remus is 94 proof. So 47% ABV. It's not on the low end. And I'm just going to make a comment, and I know this is going to sound a little bougie, but I can't stand
80
whiskey that is at 80 proof. I just feel like when you bottle something at 80 proof, you're saying we're going to give you
Cash
the
grab.
minimum possible.
cash
right?
grab.
Right, right. Which kind of sucks because there's big companies like Johnny Walker, that most of their stuff, if not all of it, is at 80 proof.
That's Scotch, and that's just a Scotch standard for some
Maybe,
weird
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
But
And that's actually a good point. A lot of American brands, they're always on the high end. It's usually like 45% on a, and I've seen like an explosion of cast
High
strength,
proof.
barrel proof. That's just the culture. Americans love intense,
fast and loud.
right? Exactly. And this one right here, I mean, for 94 proof, it's got a little heat to it.
It comes in nice. It's
It's drinkable though, but it's got enough to let you
got
know.
a little friendly hug, but
Yeah.
nothing crazy. It's definitely something I would recommend at a 40 and under bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for beginners, like you're getting into bourbon, you want to know what a good standard bourbon is.
Right.
Like,
This is the one that you want to introduce your friends to that are like, hey, I would like to try some whiskey. What's up? What's a good whiskey to try?
Yeah, you're getting past doing shots. You want to start sipping. You don't want to spend $100 on a bottle yet. Like,
Right.
Get into the George Remus.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm gonna finish this guy because the next one we're gonna jump into is actually an allocated bottle. I believe the Remus, what's that called?
The Gatsby.
The Gatsby, yeah. And I've had a chance to try it only because my good friend here, John Kay, was kind enough to share it. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up, and then we'll jump right into that one. Cheers, you guys. All right, so we jumped into the George Remus. It's their flagship, like again, 94 proof. And thank you, Nick, by the way. I would be remiss if I didn't thank you
I
enough
appreciate it.
for bringing that over. And then now we're going to get into the decent, great whiskeys here that John brought. So just to let you know, he's
This
gonna.
one's 15-year age stated, and it has a really sexy
God, yeah.
bottle.
Okay, so the cork. I don't know. Something fell. I think something fell. The cork.
That plastic.
The cork is a implement of destruction. It's got a good feel to it. This thing's got some weight. This is actually solid metal with a real cork. Yeah, that's a real cork.
Right.
That thing's got a little weight to it, man.
It's heavy metal.
It is. That's a good pour. You know what? It's not my whiskey, so let me put a little extra in there. There we go. All right, John, I'll take care of you. This is his bottle, so thank you, John, for sharing.
I have to drive, so I'll go take it.
Okay. Oh, so you want the heavy pour?
Oh yeah.
Got it. All right. Now, talk to me, John, about this bottle. This is yours. So,
Yep.
and I know it's a special allocated bottle.
You did drop the ring on the ground. That is what dropped.
Okay. So I did drop the ring. We'll pick that up here in post. All right. So, talk to me. Talk to me about this bottle. What's so cool about it? Why is it allocated?
Well, I mean, it's a 15-year MGP, and what's really crazy about it, it's barrel proof.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the proof on it, it's like 93 or something. Or
Okay.
95. It's a very low barrel proof.
Now, what was the retail on it? Because that was one of the reasons I saw it. I didn't pull the trigger on it. And looking at the proof, which I'm a proof hound, anything, if you're going to charge me a ton of money, that thing better be in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I think it was like at least a 175 or something. It was close to $200.
Yep. And just so you guys know, for the record, I live as much as possible vicariously through John.
Especially now.
John usually gets the premium stuff, and so he, being such a generous friend, he does share, and I really do appreciate you doing that. But oftentimes, because things are so allocated here in New Mexico, I'm lucky to be able to find some of the good stuff. John and others have been, generous at times to let me try and review it for the channel. I haven't reviewed this one, so maybe at some point you'll let me
absolutely.
Borrow for science. But talk to me a little bit more about like what made you buy this bottle in particular?
Well, I'm just a huge fan of Ross and Squibb, MGP, all of the source stuff. Pretty much everything in MGP is made as far as bourbon goes that I've tried. I really like. I like all the brands they source to. Mm-hmm. I like all the stuff they put out. And so when I saw this, so I actually had to hunt this bottle down. I drove up to Santa Fe at the Total Wine to get it.
Okay. Well, you got a connection over there?
No, I just heard someone from the Albuquerque Whiskey Society being out there, me posting saying I want it. Someone just DM'd me and let me know that they saw it.
Yeah.
I took the drive up and was lucky enough to still find it.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna point something out. We just came off the flagship George Remus. This one is very different, in my opinion, already. Just because I'm not getting that licorice anise.
No, this is more cherry.
Very oaky on the nose.
Very oaky, yeah. Dusty, leathery, black pepper.
Tobacco.
Yeah. It's got like a different kind of spice.
We went from their flagship to their crown jewel. Well, one of their crown jewels. They have a even older, better one that was released in like 2017 or something.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, we missed that one.
It was a 23 year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And did you get a chance to try that one?
No, I just saw it on their website when I was just looking a minute ago, and I was like, oh my god. I was like, oh, it's old.
I am getting like pipe tobacco, or at least there's something like leather grain on the nose.
Kind of like an uncured leather.
Yeah, and you guys are going to kill me for saying this, but I'm thinking of Isla Scotch. Isla Scotch. And here's why. Not because it's like smoky. Peaty or smoky, but Isla Scotch usually has this like briny, earthy tone. It's difficult to describe besides like leathery and old. Like it feels like an old man, right? Like when you think of like a pipe tobacco or an older guy like just relaxing and enjoying his later years, and being dusty and kind of crusty. That's sort of like some of the notes that I'm picking out here that I didn't get in the George Remus.
An old man's leather smoking jacket?
Yeah, or like a leather-bound book that somebody who's been around a while, time and time again, just kind of going back to their diary, or just something like their journal or something like that smells like. That's what I'm getting, just on the aroma. I haven't even tasted it, but that's something that I'm getting. And you get that a lot on Isla Scotch. And that's when you get past all that like smokiness and peat, right in your face.
Was this bottle, even though allocated, was it a little bit easier to find possibly because it's a Remus instead of if it was the same thing under a new, who knows, one of their other brands that they sourced to?
So I don't think their sourced products are quite as allocated as like allocated product is. I think that their sourced products, they just deal with like shipping issues and like just distribution issues, right? Like just Penelope just isn't in New they're just not distributed out here. It's not that it's allocated because you go up to Colorado and the shelves are filthy with them, right? It's the same with like Old Elk. Like we got plenty of it out here. It's not allocated. It's just good stuff that sits on the shelves because it's a little
just not
expensive.
popular.
You know, I get it.
The community out here is very laser focused, and I'm just going to call it out.
Everyone's Buffalo Trace.
Buffalo Trace and
Jack
Jack Daniels.
All the typical allocated stuff.
And Heaven Hill stuff. Like those are your, I'm just going to say the trifecta out here. The big three out here are those products.
Yep.
Everybody goes gaga for it.
I think that's most everywhere. I think the big three, like, their allocated stuff kind of dominates the market. And I think the MGP, a lot of their source stuff really hangs out and hits with a lot of those big hitters, you know, because it's really good high proof bourbon that was already aged, that then people that are very nerdy about bourbon have then taken themselves, they selected and sourced specific barrels, and then they are working with cooperages to make barrels specific to them, to how they want them, to toast them. You know, they're doing split staves and all this crazy stuff to finish them, you know, to give us, you know, all the Lulu, the Old Elk, the Penelope, right, and all these different things. And you know, Buzzard's Roost, right? These guys are doing unique things with great bourbon and able to, in my opinion, it really competes with all the allocated stuff.
Right.
Which is
good.
And it's expensive.
Which is good.
All these things sit on the shelves, and people are like, oh man, $110, you know, $90, like, you know, Old Elk, Lulu, like, but you can find it, right? Or do you want to spend $100 for some great MGP that's finished in some toasted IR barrels that taste freaking amazing?
Yeah.
Or do you want to spend $800 on some Weller CYPB that you're going to be horribly disappointed with? Right, because you spent $800 on a $100 bottle.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You know, and I want to touch on something. So John mentioned, you know, $100, you know, on source stuff, but you know, that makes me wonder, like, how quick again are you to spend $100 or more on an MGP bottle that is, I guess, either allocated or a limited release? And I'm gonna kind of pivot towards Nick on that.
There's been a few that I've happily purchased. Nulu is usually up there, especially for the toasted stuff, and
Penelope.
I've never been sad with any of those.
People
purchases.
are pretty happy with that. Yeah.
Nashville Barrel releases MGP.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was wondering. I don't know if everybody, maybe listening or watching, they probably had MGP and may not actually know that the product that they bought or drank or like is actually from that.
That's a good point.
John went over a few of the major players.
So in front of us is actually my bar. So you guys don't see it on camera, but so there's one that's already like kind of jumping out. Joseph Magnus, based out of Washington D.C. They're more of a bottler than they are like a distiller. Like they're not specifically distilling it, but it is an MGP source distillate. They will put it in different barrels.
Yeah, they're finishing.
Yeah, they're going to finish it, or sorry, they're going to age it and then maybe do like a secondary aging, which is commonly referred to as finish. And, you know, they'll come out with like their cigar batch or their cigar bourbon. The standard Joseph Magnus is aged in like a cognac cask and a sherry cask, and it's also a blend of like just a standard
it's three. It's
bourbon.
cognac, sherry, and like something else. I forget.
Something, but that is an MGP sourced. And I think, you know, most people that are looking at Joseph Magnus as a bottle, they're not even like, they don't really care to look, you know, in the back of the label to see, okay, well, who made it? You know, what's going on? Other than like the front of the label, which tells you, oh, it's a sherry finish. It's, you know, it's Joseph Magnus. It's got a little cognac finishing and blah, blah, blah. What I'm saying is, okay, for me, I will not hunt Joseph Magnus. I feel like it's good enough. It tastes good, but I don't know that it's worthy of being $100 or more. And I only mention that because after trying great whiskeys that are easily $50-$60, that gave me a frame of reference to say, okay, there's really no need to chase bottles as much as there's a need to find hidden gems or bottles that are really worth your money. And they're gonna really get you there.
You know, I agree. It's not about hunting specific bottles. It's more about having the knowledge of what bottles to be looking for. Right? Because there's a lot of hidden gems out there. There's a lot of like good stuff. There's a lot of allocated product that like may just like randomly like end up on a shelf somewhere. You know, so it's not about like just being like, oh,
Right.
I want this. No, it's all about like knowing like, okay, there's a lot of good stuff out there, and knowing what it is, and just keeping an eye out for it.
And you know that comes
and
with
that's
time.
how I hunt.
Yeah,
certainly.
But that comes with time.
Yeah.
Like
time and research. You got because you got to know also like what you like.
Exactly.
You got to like
Exactly.
like if you don't like makers, you're not going to hunt for makers. If you try MGP and you don't like it, you're not going to hunt for it. If you like taste George Dickel and you don't like it, you're not going to hunt for it. You know, like people
Right.
have different tastes, and people like different things.
Yeah, and me personally, I'm a big Southwest guy. Call me regionalist. I don't know what you want to call that, but you know, when I say Southwest or regional or whatever,
Texas.
you know, I'm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Colorado.
So
Yeah, Texas,
yes,
Colorado.
I will specifically hunt. Now this is where I'm going to shift gears here. I'm not a hunter, but I will specifically go after and gladly, you know, change my mindset from I'm not going to get any more whiskey. I have way too much. To, oh, okay, that's a new Balcones, I will get that. Or that's a new Lost Whiskey bottle. Or that's a new 291. Or that's a new old, Delbach. Or that's a new Colkegan or something like that. I'm a regionalist because there is something to be said about the experience with Southwestern whiskey. There is something very different about that experience. There's something very different about the taste.
It ages very fast out here, so you have it's a
Yeah.
beautiful mix of like this young anise sweetness, but also like all the tannins you get from the oak, but it's also then missing, you know, that dusty, real old flavor.
Well, let me
Right,
ask, let me ask you about
it gives
that.
like
though.
a unique combination of like very rich
Yeah.
flavor that's not old.
Well, let me
Right.
ask you
You don't
something
get that
about
out
that.
of, like,
Let me
anything
ask you
else.
something about that because this is where I was trying to segue. In my opinion, I've tasted a lot of KSB, Kentucky Straight Bourbon, whiskey that is made out of Indiana, and not just MGP. But I sort of feel like they're in a category all themselves, and a lot of them, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just, again, it's a regional thing.
It is
They
regional.
all have a very similar taste, a very similar experience. And to me, a lot of it tastes good, and most people in America are gravitating to it. Like that's where their sweet spot is. That's the whiskey that speaks to them. But I've tried it, and I feel like, okay, it gets me there. It's enjoyable. But when I try stuff made in the Southwest or just different regions in America, I feel like I get a way different experience. I feel like, wow, that to me captures my imagination or captures my attention when I, you know, get an Old Elk, when I get a Laws, when I get a Balcones, and I keep referencing these same brands, but even, you know, Garrison Brothers, they just taste different. I feel like they bring something completely new to the table, and they're not what I would refer to as a traditional bourbon or a traditional American whiskey. And again, I think that's probably why I'm so region-centric, because I like tasting things out of Boulder Spirits, Deer Hammer, and I'm looking at these bottles like that are in front of us that I really do gravitate to. And occasionally like Starlight. That is something that, okay, you could say, well, that's, you know, in that same ballpark as the Kentucky Straight Bourbons or that Indiana MGP distillate, which it's not. But they at least try something very different. They're trying to push the envelope of what you can do with something that you call bourbon now, right? And I think that's why I've become a regionalist, because some of the brands that I've mentioned do try to push the envelope. They're not just trying to be cookie cutter and give you that same old, same old. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about that. Again, I'm not trying to ruffle feathers, but I am interested in hearing what you all have to say, and especially you two guys that are here about like, okay, there's something that we've all kind of been introduced to and have been told like this is whiskey, this is bourbon, and this is like the cream of the crop, or this is what everybody else is drinking. But what say you on that?
Well, I think you know, Kentucky Straight Bourbon, which is, you know, Kentucky, Indiana, a little bit of Tennessee, but Tennessee's mostly kind of its own thing also. But it's Kentucky, Indiana, that Kentucky straight bourbon is
The big three. I guess that would be the big three in bourbon.
Yeah.
Tennessee, right?
Yep.
Kentucky, Indiana.
Yep. I think that that's what they've been around for so long, and people even talk about like, you can't be bourbon unless it's from Kentucky. You'd be like, okay, that law was changed like 200 years ago, so forget about it, right? But the point being is, people just, when you talk about just classic bourbon, people think about Kentucky straight bourbon,
Right?
Indiana,
Or that
bourbon.
MGP taste.
Yeah, MGP,
right?
Just straight, normal bourbon. When you get into the other things, it's certainly going beyond. And there's a lot of other brands out there. I think, I was just talking about them yesterday, I forgot their name now. They're out, the Distillery out of Ohio. I brought you,
It'll come to you.
yeah. Anyway, there are distilleries also that aren't necessarily in Kentucky that are making bourbon that hits a lot of those classic notes, right? There's a distillery out of Washington also that isn't with the I think they're like on the other side of the mountain range than a lot of those other Washington distilleries, and so it has a different flavor profile. And I think they've latched on to a little bit closer to the Kentucky bourbon profile, right? And so a lot of those flavor profiles are regional, right? Based on heat, humidity, yearly temperature, water, the grain, where they're getting all their stuff from, right?
Right.
But a lot of it's mash bill, right? But I think most of it really does come from heat and humidity, right? Because like you said, we played with the mini barrels here.
It's also the grain. The grain.
Certainly,
that has
the
something to do
grain.
with
The grain plays. So there's the three things that play like equal effect. It's going to be the mash bill. It's going to be then the wood, the barrel, right? And it's going to be then the environment, right? Because you look at like Scotland, it takes forever for things to age in Scotland because it's so cool and humid there. Yeah. Right. Whereas in Texas, it's super hot and dry, so things age faster. Try and age things here in New Mexico, you have to do it in a humidity controlled area.
That's right.
Because if not, your booze will evaporate.
Right.
Like, I've tried mini barrel experiments and it just doesn't work if you play with it for more than a week because everything evaporates.
Right.
So.
Well, I'm enjoying this particular dram as you're like talking through your experience and your knowledge of the big three. Again, this one feels a little earthy, but it also has vanilla and more brown sugar.
This one's quite a bit different. It's a lot more complex than the entry level, which of course it better be.
It better be, yeah. Because I think it's 15-year, right?
Yeah, you can taste a lot more of the oak barrel. You get a little bit of the cherry and tobacco that was missing from the $40 bottle. I actually smell maybe some like bubblicious bubble gum a little bit on the nose.
That's actually a note that I got as you were saying that. I'm like, that's what it is.
Like cotton candy.
Do you remember
sugary sweetness?
Did you guys ever collect baseball cards?
Yeah.
Do you remember Tops? When you opened it, they had that
bubble gum.
stick of bubble gum, and it was all
powder.
dusty and had the powder.
Yep.
That's what it smells like. That's what it smells like.
I actually ate a piece from a pack from the 80s that I had got.
Still just tasted the same, I
At
bet.
least 20 years later. It's a little crunchier.
Crunchy.
Besides that, it was
They were crunchy as heck back then too, man. What are you talking about? I cut my lip on one. Just chewing it.
So shout out to all of you guys that still collect Tops with the bubble gum. If they, I don't even know if they still got the bubble gum, but if they, that was one of the reasons I like Tops. Sorry to get like all sidetracked, but Topps baseball cards were one of my favorite to collect just because they had that stick of bubble gum in it, and it was horrible. But as a kid, like, hey, it's gonna get you there.
This is like a prize in every pack.
Well, yeah, because as a kid there was also Bazooka. Remember Bazooka gum?
Yeah.
And it was like really no different. It was just bigger or like thicker.
Break your teeth more.
Yeah. Be careful with Bazooka.
Yeah.
But it at least had the jokes that came with it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I got sidetracked, but let's go ahead and let's wrap this one up and then get into
This
our
one's
next
great.
one, which is going to be our Remus Repeal batch number 6, which John brought.
I have like a visible physical reaction every time I drink this. It's so good. I really enjoy this one.
So
I'm a Remus fanboy. Like I said, you know, full disclosure, I probably should have said this earlier. I own 10 shares in stock in MGP. So just let everyone know. I am
you're
pushing things for my own self-interest.
Biased as a mug.
Yep.
Biased as a mug.
10 whole shares. I mean, at this point, man.
No wonder you always. That's why you got it. That's the real reason you got that.
So when I bought that, actually, at that point,
Did you have shares?
I'm trying to think when I bought the shares. I think I bought that slightly before I bought the shares. So
This is a great bottle. I don't. Let me start with that. Let me preface with, the Gatsby is a great bottle. I don't know if they're going to release another version of the Gatsby. If they do, I don't know if I'll get it. As you heard, John's got shares in MGP, so he's likely to get a bottle or two. And again, I'll live vicariously through him. But let me just kind of close this up. This is solid. I just don't know if
I agree. There's
worth the price tag.
There's a lot of things out there for $200.
Yeah.
For less than $200, and if you put it in a blind, that would be just as good or better, or offer different tasting experience, offer you more flavor, depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah.
For $200, like it is asking an awful lot. You set your expectations at a certain level.
I feel like it's pretty close. I mean, most of the stuff that you could get for similar price range, I don't think anything's going to be much better if, based on taste preference and whatever. The 15 years, it actually tastes like possibly older. It has a lot of that old kind of musty, funky that you usually don't get. 15 years is actually, I'm surprised it has so much of those flavors.
Yeah, in my opinion, I mean, I think it's definitely an interesting bottle. The presentation, they put it in a really nice, fancy box.
They did.
It's in
the cork alone
bottle. Yeah,
is a nice self-defense weapon.
So, I mean, you're certainly. I was certainly paying for all of that, right? The manufacturers don't do this stuff and just eat that cost, right? Like they put that cost of whatever the bottle is, the cork, the box, they put that into the cost of what you pay.
Right.
Right. So the fancier the presentation is, like, straight up at the end of the day, you are paying for that.
Right.
You are paying for
I could see
a
that.
nice presentation.
But I think when I looked at it, I was thinking, okay, Gatsby. That's kind of catchy.
Yep.
It's a marketing thing.
Oh,
Gatsby. You think of Gatsby's talks about a rich dude, right?
Gatsby. Yep.
Right. And so this must be a fancy, rich bottle,
And it's very that Art Deco
it's a nice-
style. It's very that.
It's a nice decanter.
Yep.
At the end of the day, when you get done with this, I'm pretty sure John's not going to throw that bottle away. He's going to find a way to repurpose it.
Make it into a lamp like I've been doing.
There you go.
Yeah. It's a sexy bottle. But at the end of the day, I always go into it wondering, am I paying for the marketing or am I actually paying for the juice inside? And I think at times I'm a bit conflicted and I end up not pulling the trigger. I'm wrong, a lot of the time. I admit that. There are some great bottles I should have gotten, like the Repeal, the Remus Repeal Batch 5, which we're not getting into. We're getting into the 6 here next.
I wish I bought a backup, so I should have bought backups.
I should have got it when I had the chance. But I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, that it's a nice looking bottle. But at the end of the day, it's MGP, and is it really worth that price tag? And I think at the time it was like $80.
Well,
and I really should have got
that
it.
one. The 5 was $65 and $70.
Okay.
And then the 6 went up to the 80, 90.
Okay.
And now the 7 is like 100 or 120.
John's an accurate historian. Let me correct myself. Yeah, it was at 65, and then the 6 was at a higher. And I think because there was so much popularity that was gained from Batch 5, they're like, let's mark it up just a smidge, and I think $80 was okay for me, But so this is batch number 6, the Repeal batch, right?
Yes, this one is Remus Repeal Batch 6.
Nice. Now this one's got a
42
lot of transparency behind it. Do you want to kind of rattle
yeah,
off?
this one is actually a blend of 5. It is 2% 2008,
Wow.
27% 2012, 29% 2014, 17% 2012, with a different 36% rye. The other one was 21, and then 25% 2014 bourbon. It actually has the percentages of rye in each mash bill. So it's pretty
Transparent.
yeah, it's
So
pretty
you know what's
transparent.
up.
Yeah, and all of it's their stuff.
Yeah, and you know, I like seeing that, honestly, and I get it. If you have a flagship whiskey, it's not meant to be very complex, it's just meant to get you there and deliver, you know, the goods, so to speak, just kind of, especially if it's a $20-25 bottle, like how much expectations can you have? You know, are you gonna be that nerdy that you want to know all the details behind I guess a budget whiskey? I don't know. Me, I could care less. But I think having a transparency on a bottle like this, where your expectations are a little higher because they charged higher. They expect more out of you as a customer.
Yeah,
and as a customer, I expect more out of the brand. You know.
Yeah, I want to know what I'm spending for $85.
Yeah.
We were talking about the mash bills earlier. This one shows a 21% rye mash bill that they have 3 different ages of, and a 36% rye mash bill that they have 2. So
that's their high.
They have at
That's
least
their
2
high rye is the 36.
two high rye, the high rye and the regular mash bills that they blended in for this one. So there's at least those.
What's the regular mash bill? Because remember we were talking about that. It was in the 60s.
Check that Remus right there. Let's see what that one says.
All right.
39. This one's 51 corn, 39 rye, 10 malted.
That one seems a little off profile. It's not quite.
Yeah,
Because I remember it's in the 60s as the corn.
Yeah, so it seems like they definitely kind of they have a lot of offerings of their different mash bills.
Yeah, they're switching up gears, right? So, let's dive into this one. Now it's higher proof, 100 proof, right?
Yeah, this one is
A little burn on the nose, but
man, I like the nose though.
I get a lot of cherry on it.
Yeah, it's got a little bit more complexity,
like a medicinal cherry, but
it doesn't have as much of that earthiness that the
has
Gatsby
a
has.
light funk on the background, a little bit of that leathery old kind of smell, but it's
got that a lot of oak influence still.
And let me say something. So this one has quite a bit of balance.
Coming in.
This one's balanced. To me, it's not one thing or the other. This feels like a lot of different things in the right place.
It's very the nose is complex. You keep going in and finding different stuff.
It does have cherry. I didn't get like as much medicinal cherry that you described, but I do get cherry. It is fruity. The other two, they weren't fruity at all.
Like cherry pit.
I could see that. I could see that.
Like I'm getting like medicinal cherry and like cherry pit.
I'm not getting that licorice from the first one.
All dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. Yeah, I could see that. Still not earthy, not as much as the last one. I think that last one was a little bit, I don't want to say polarizing like you're gonna love it or hate it, but polarizing in the sense that it's very different from the first one.
Yep.
Completely opposite.
And this one is it's earthy as it gets is like the cherry pit. It's got a little bit of earthiness, but it's not real earth. It's like what will be one day earth.
Do you get any tobacco? I feel like the tobacco kind of comes back on this one.
A little bit, yeah. The more I'm going back to it, I'm getting more
like dry
the
tobacco,
dark chocolate's
not
coming.
Yeah.
It's
not pipe tobacco,
root.
but dry tobacco.
Sure. And dark, like a cacao or dark chocolate. Huh. Wow. I like the nose, so I'm going to get right into it. So cheers, gents. Cheers, gents. Wow.
That's layered.
Very, very approachable. So 100 proof. What we tried was 94, right on the cusp at 94, but under 100 proof. This one feels right on par with what we drank. Like not,
Does
oh
it-
wow, a step above in intensity and heat. No, it feels very, I'm going to say it smooth. I'm going to say it. It feels,
Easy drinking.
very approachable. I like to use other other words besides smooth. Smooth.
I'm smooth. The whiskey's easy drinking.
There you go.
You are smooth. You are smooth. For the record, Nick's smooth.
I agree.
I always like well balanced, because you want the burn to be there, but
Yeah.
you also want the flavor to override or be as much as the burn, right? So you have the burn, it's alcohol that you drink, but you also have more flavor. Because if you just want burn, just go do shots of vodka, right? But we're looking for flavor, so you want more flavor. You want all the complexity to be there.
Yeah, I want the finish to be full of flavor,
Yep.
not full of heat.
No, you want the
Right.
heat to be there, but all the flavor to be on top of it.
And this one has a lot of complexity. It's definitely the most complex. You get the sweet. Not really. I'm not really getting any caramel, but I'm getting a lot of
brown
cherry,
sugar.
and then on the finish, I guess that high rye is coming through, but I'm getting a little bit of like a mintiness. I love rye, and I'm getting at
Menthol.
the end.
Menthol.
Yeah,
right.
It goes from cherry and then into that kind of a rye menthol minty. This is. I may or may not have a sealed bottle of Remus 5 that we'll have to do a revisit on.
Oh
well.
Okay.
Since I brought the cheapest bottle this time,
Right.
I'll try to make it up.
This is. I will put that in the back of my cabinet then until it's called out to go, head to head against 5.
You heard that, folks. So we have ourselves a little challenge. Just stay tuned. I agree with you. This one's got a good bit of complexity, and just for you guys watching, this is batch 6. Just as a reminder, and I keep reminding you,
which people
because
say is worse than 5. This one
that's where I was going. It was batch
not worse,
5,
but not as good as 5.
Batch 5 was heralded as
phenomenal.
like one of the best
The best.
MGP releases to date. It really is good. John let me borrow it. It is really good. It was superb.
Yes.
Did you ever get it back?
Yeah.
I always give you guys back.
I killed it on my own. Yeah. No, he gave it back.
So Nick and John are I would say the biggest contributors to the Whiskey One channel. I'm always obliged to share the whiskey just so I could do my reviews and keep it moving. And often, honestly, I can't keep up with as much whiskey as there is out there. I have a collection, but I still can't keep up with as much whiskey that comes out, And that actually brings me up to a subject that I would like your guys' thoughts on. So every brand's got flagship whiskey. MGP is no different. Have you guys noticed that when it comes to a brand's flagship whiskey, people pay less attention to their flagship whiskeys than they do for their their finish or their experimental batches, their single barrels or their
Everybody
finished
wants
product?
what's new and fancy.
Yeah, right. And they leave the
Some of the
Right. They leave the flagship alone.
Flagship stuff is great, especially for the
1792 small batch. You put that in a blind at 5 ways against 1792 small batch, and then you pull out your 4 favorite Kentucky straight bourbons.
yeah.
Right, the 4 best you can find. I'm telling you, 1792 small batch will come up in the top 2, top 3 at worst.
I think I have 3 or 4 different single barrels.
Oh, the single barrels are great.
Of
Foolproof.
Yeah,
Foolproof is even better. But
Yeah.
1790 small
Foolproof
batch,
brings the heat,
it's
though.
$30. It sits on the shelves everywhere. And I'm telling you, blind, you'll be like, it hangs out. It's great. It doesn't win, but it doesn't win, but it will place or show in a 5-way contest against anything.
Would that be your favorite flagship bottle if you were to recommend one to somebody? Or which one would it be?
Yeah, I would probably say 1792 small batch. It really is. It is a
Really?
great.
You never actually
Dude,
bring
I
1792 to the
You're
house.
supposed to have
Which
it.
I'm surprised. I have 1792.
I
but
don't
the
even
foolproof.
own
the foolproof.
I don't even own a small batch myself
Okay.
currently, just because I'm at the foolproof and bottle and beyond. I'm kind of beyond.
Yeah,
right.
You've graduated from
Correct.
the small batch. I got
But
you.
I'm saying that
Yeah.
you do it blind 5 ways, it will possibly win place or show. Right?
I think that brings up a good point. I mean, 1792 is a very underrated
Yes.
whiskey.
Barton?
Yeah, it's Spartan.
Yep. Barton's. I think the name of the brand is Barton 1792, and is it not?
Well,
it's not 1792 Barton, right?
So I think
Or
it
not
says it's bottled by
1792.
1792 Bardstown, in Bardstown, Kentucky.
Okay.
I think.
You guys watching, drop a comment.
Let us know
You
how
can
wrong
correct
we are.
us if we're wrong, but I think it's Barton 1792. But to your point, there's a lot of underrated whiskeys,
Maker's Mark.
flagship whiskeys
Maker's
that
Mark
don't get as
and
much
George
love
Remus.
as the finished stuff, the
Yes.
experimental stuff, and I'm very guilty of that. But I know who I am. I like weird. I like different. When everybody's going after
You're a
cookie
whiskey
cutter.
connoisseur. You're a connoisseur.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, but when everybody's going after cookie cutter, Buffalo Trace, and the big three, I'm like, well, what's that one over there? Like, that's some weird, obscure craft whiskey over there. I bet you that one's a hitter. And, I roll the dice sometimes, but oftentimes, like, I actually hit some good ones, And looking at the collection, Westward is one of those that I took a chance on and very pleased. Delbach was one of those, and I was very pleased. And here's a brand I'm gonna throw a quick shout out because Kenny came, allowed us to do an interview with him. But Bourbon Pursuit, they now have their own brand. I have a lot of respect for Kenny and the things that they are doing. They come into it as an enthusiast.
Yes, blending and bottling, and they do really good.
Yes, but they're
Really
coming
good
in.
stuff.
They're coming into it. So here's
They're
where
whiskey
it's
nerds,
different,
man.
right?
They're a bunch of nerds.
They're not coming into it with, here's just a bunch of investors. They sat around the room and they're like, hey, we just have some, we have a lot of money. Let's make a lot of money and let's figure out what is it that's going to be out there. And they're on the whiteboard like, oh, whiskey's one of them. Let's put together a brand. They came in as YouTubers, just like myself, and they have a deep appreciation. They have a passion for whiskey, right? And they, at some point, decided, I bet you we could come up with some interesting bottles. Let's put our names out there. Let's put something out there and work with people that we know within the business, and let's see what happens.
Segler Spear and MGP.
Yeah, and so Pursuit
Dickel?
Spirit.
Is
So
it
Pursuit
Dickel
Spirit.
Is it Dickel they're sourcing from in Tennessee, or who
No,
else?
it's Bardstown. It's Bardstown.
Who sources out of Tennessee? Because they're sourcing
I
from someone from
don't know.
Tennessee. I know Dickel sources out of Tennessee.
I don't know the answer to that question,
Is it
but I throw.
Greenbrier?
I'm only shouting.
I heard there is someone else sourcing out of Tennessee besides Dickel. It's kind of like a mid-tier startup. I think it might be like Greenbrier.
If you guys know, drop a comment. Let us know. But let me kind of wrap up my thought. I just wanted to do a quick shout out because there's a difference between those that go into it purely from a marketing standpoint, like we're here to make some money, which if you're a business, that's exactly why you're in business, and I get it. But they went into it with a deep enthusiasm for whiskey, and they were like, well, let's see what happens. Let's roll the dice. And I shot them out because I give them a lot of props for doing that. They didn't have to do that, and actually took a big risk in doing that. But from what I've tried so far,
still taking a big risk.
yeah, but they're putting themselves out there. If you guys follow Bourbon Pursuit or Pursuit Spirits, either on social media or through YouTube, these guys are working their ass off. They're constantly on social media,
Finally, the first
doing
person.
different events, doing different events. They're getting together with multiple brands, but they're still doing it. Like, they're still sitting down, just like we are in a podcast forum, talking about whiskey and what's going on within the industry, but also like finding unique ways to put a new product out. And I just wanted to give them a quick shout out because I really appreciate that. But going back to what I said, like, there's a lot more attention being given now to like the finished product, right? And I see one now, Barrel. Barrel's a great company that is an independent bottler, blender, and they find ways to take a bourbon or a rye and just do some interesting things with what you can do and doing different, experimental finishes. And really, that's what speaks to me. Like, I want to try something that is totally different than everything else.
They buy barrels from everybody.
Oh, yeah.
They release scotches, rums, Dickles, MGPs, like whoever. If they find a barrel they think is good enough, it's theirs. Like,
Yep.
so you could figure it out, but it doesn't specifically say
Well,
where it came from, but you can do some research.
On the back it says the state of distillation.
Yeah.
They'll break everything down, and then I believe, I could be wrong, but I think Barrel is one of the companies where if you go to their website,
Okay.
they then actually do a further breakdown of like actually what distillery, everything. They're allowed to contractually say where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
I guess some distilleries like just contractually like they don't want you for whatever reason saying that.
I could see that.
Okay.
I could see the reason why. Like if you up, or excuse me, if you messed up and
I believe
you made a
That's
subpar
two.
product.
We haven't even gotten in one each.
I believe it's kind of like a thing that they do forever. Like the distilleries that do it kind of do it for everyone. And I
Right.
think from what I understand, what I hear on the street, Dickel and Bardstown seem to be like, if you contract distill from them, they don't want you saying, like, obviously you have to put the state of distillation from it, but they don't want you saying, I got this from Dickel, I got this from Bardstown.
Yeah, you
At
have
least
to
that's what I've
proclaim the source of your distillate, but you don't have to proclaim the brand that provided it to you.
Correct. Yeah, you have to say the state of distillation.
Right.
Right. And a couple of the distilleries that are doing contract distilling actually then in their contract they distill with people is that like they don't want you actually releasing and disclosing that you got it from them.
Well, you take a gamble. I mean, that's a liability. I get it.
It's true.
You take a gamble.
So you don't know what they're going to do with your product before they release it.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
And it could make something that is
it's
your profile, but
Bardstown
change it in a way that, like, oh, that tastes
Bardstown
like crap.
Distillery
I will never
started-
have an we're talking MGP.
Yeah.
I'll never buy an MGP product. I can't stand MGP. And they grossly transformed that MGP distillate.
Yep. Yeah, because Bardstown Distillery, it started as it was just a bunch of billionaire investors that then, saw the wave and got into it, and that's what they are. And hey, God bless them, they're doing a great job. No shade thrown at them, but I think they're going by what you're thinking. Is they're like, hey, yeah, we'll contract distill for whoever, but we don't know what you're doing with what we're giving you,
Right.
And they also they know themselves that maybe they're holding on to their best stuff, right, for themselves, and they're kind of just giving out whatever else to whoever. You're like, hey, you're going to do whatever you're going to do with this, so we'll just give you whatever, right, because we know you're going to put that in some secondary barrel, right, or finish it or do something so you can at least say you're doing something, right, because if you're just going to bottle it, like, whatever, right? So why should we give you our best stuff if you're just going to do whatever with it, right? Whereas MGP, they're like, hey, they've built their reputation on helping people start their companies, so they don't mind giving their best stuff to other people. They may charge a premium for it, certainly.
There's also enough
But
MGP out there to know the difference between good MGP and bad MGP that somebody messed up.
Yeah.
At this point,
Because
there's so much out
because
there.
they know they're like, hey, we're contract distillers. You can't blame us for
Right.
whatever they did, Whereas Bardstown, yeah, they're a rather new company. They're investors, so they're like, hey, sure, we'll sell it to you, but you can't, don't be putting our name on this.
Some of the best, and I'd like to know what you guys think also. Some of the best MGP stuff that's out and available right now. I would, especially for some maybe entry level stuff that should be pretty easy to find. High West. The
That's a
High
great
West
example.
Bourbon and High West Rye that they
Yeah.
release are amazing. You could still about $30, I would say, usually for the entry level. And then another favorite of mine would probably be Smoke Wagon.
Yeah.
Uncut the Younger, for somebody to release a full high proof MGP at $40 or less, it's amazing. It's a good buy. I know they're at least,
And he's usually picking good barrels
Two,
also.
yeah,
You know,
he's-
so everything he goes through like his process of being like, oh yeah, I've tasted
very
this.
super transparent. He's an awesome dude to watch on social media. You
Yeah,
can find
yeah, he's an interesting character, based out of Vegas.
he's
Smoke
he's
Wagon,
fun
yeah.
to watch. He'll be like, oh, I fucked this batch up. I had to add 4 more barrels of this, the 12-year to make it taste right and whatever.
Right.
It's fun. He's a fun watch for sure.
But he's also like, he's vested in it. And
He's
that
honest.
that goes back to what I was saying about Bourbon Pursuit. They're enthusiastic and passionate about whiskey in general. And you can say what you want. I'm sure, everybody's a business person, but when you invest that passion and that enthusiasm into your product line, it isn't just
shows.
seen as a marketing ploy. Like there's diehards now when it comes to Smoke Wagon. I mean, just people within the Albuquerque Whiskey Society, which is what we're part of. It's a local whiskey group. You see people posting all the time. Oh, this is the latest Smoke Wagon product. The malted rye, the single barrel.
Those rye
Yes.
single barrels went fast, both releases.
Oh, right. And I mean, these guys are deeply passionate about following what's going on with Smoke Wagon, as well as what's going on, with High West. And, I would say you're a big High West fan. I try to keep up with everything, but High West makes some really good products. And you know what? High West sources, a lot of their whiskey from other distillers, MGP being one of them. And they have found a way to take that distillate and make something special. There's been a lot of recent releases like the High Country, which is a single malt, an American single malt,
That's right,
and
yeah.
something that most people, I wouldn't say they're gravitating to. Me personally, I gravitate to American single malt.
Yeah, I really like it. If you want to try
It's
something
tasty.
different and
Right.
you want to get into like the American single malt scene,
Right.
yeah.
And we could have a conversation just on Midwinter Night's Dram, just by itself, because to me, I consider that one a polarizing one because of now how much popularity has exploded from that release. I got a bottle and we're going to probably need to segue away from this topic, but 4 years ago, I bought a bottle, or maybe even 5 years ago, I bought a bottle at the same time that I bought their Campfire. And I thought, okay, I tasted the Campfire, I tasted the Midnight Winter's Dram, and at the time, I think they were both like $60-$70 each, respectively, something around there. And, I thought, okay, this seems very unique and special, and I tried them. I thought, okay, these are good. I wasn't like blown away, like, oh my God, like, let me go get a bunch of backups. I didn't feel that way. And it wasn't actually popular at the time, but over the last 2 years, some reason, like, it exploded in popularity. Not as much the Campfire, but the Midnight Winter's Dram was selling for easily $200 or more in some of our local liquor stores. And I thought to myself, that's a bit of a price gouge, because I went back to my bottle, I tasted it, and I thought, it's good. I don't know that I would like pull out a loan for it. And I started to see the gouging, right? I started to see local liquor stores take advantage of the popularity, which I guess is a business, why not? But as a consumer, I kept thinking to myself, there's a lot of stuff out there now. There's so much selection out there that I can easily pass for this and not miss a beat. I just wanted to share with you guys that it is a good whiskey. It's solid, don't get me wrong. And at the time that I got it, it was at a very approachable price, and a respectable price, $70-$80. But now we've seen these it's become allocated. It's become this limited release that hardly anybody can get their hands on. And you know, I think the local liquor stores are starting to take advantage. They're starting to they're doing quite a bit of gouging. And, you know, just understand something. You guys are consumers. At the end of the day, what happens in the liquor stores is actually driven by what you guys do. And I think that gets lost on... I think that gets lost. I'll just leave. I don't want to like pick on anybody, but I want you guys to understand that like if you are going to shell out over $200 for anything, the next time they get their chance to sell that same bottle, they're going to push the envelope just that much more.
Yeah,
so
prices,
the next time we
prices
see
never come down.
Midwinter Night Dram, it's probably going to be starting at either $250 or even $300. That's just my bold prediction. I don't know, but John, what do you think?
Dude, I hope it sticks at the 120 price range for a little bit. So, the point I was getting at was they, unfortunately, Midwinter's High West seemed to realize that the single barrel picks they were doing were becoming as sought after as their Midwinter Night Drams by some of us whiskey nerds, because basically the Midwinter Night Dram is just a rye finished in a port barrel.
That's right.
Right? And so all these different picks that they have out were bourbons and ryes finished in all these wild different barrels, that, and some of them were even better than the Midwinter's Night Dram.
Several.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're
And
delicious.
they stopped doing those. They're not doing the picks anymore.
Which is actually very disappointing,
Yeah.
because one of the things we mentioned, and I don't know if we got
They're
cut
still
off.
doing like Distillery release,
right? But I don't
they're
know if we
not
got
doing
cut
it
off.
for like club.
I don't know if we got cut off.
club picks anymore.
So we having technical difficulties. I don't know if we got cut off in the middle of the video, but I want to make sure we capture this. There are local whiskey group picks, whether that be a store pick or a whiskey group pick, where we, like the Albuquerque Whiskey Society, recently, well, it was last year, so it's fairly recent, there was a double rye, and it was finished in a Grenache, barrel, which is like an orange wine style type of a barrel, and it was finished.
Delicious.
And I'm gonna tell you something. I think it retailed for about $35.
I have a backup. I went through two of them and I found a backup.
And you weren't the only one.
Yeah,
first of all, it's rare to see a barrel pick at that price. Just whatever it is at that price.
Yeah,
and
ridiculous.
The fact that it was like a special release with extra finishing. It sold out really, really quick. And the reason it sold out really quick was number one, the price, right? But number two was it was a really good release.
It was good.
Holy cow. I was impressed by it. And now, as a consumer, you're thinking, okay, well, there's this barrel pick, really special, looks very interesting, and oh boy, it was tasty. And then you compare that to something like a Midwinter Night's Dram, where you're going to get gouged by a local liquor store.
Price.
Yeah, $200, maybe even higher. And you got to say to yourself, which one do I go with? I'm sorry, a consumer's going to think logically most of the time. Let me go with that pick, and let me get 2 bottles, not 1, but 2, maybe even 3 or 4. And they might even actually spend up to $200, but get a bang for their buck.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to just the 1 bottle, and they roll the dice. I don't know if it's going to be just as good as they say it is.
I usually pay about 50 or so, 50, 55 for their picks.
So,
that one was surprisingly
It was
low.
low. It was crazy.
Right.
Total Wine has a
Right.
bourbon right now, and it's like $50. And it's finished in
finished in
something.
rum.
And I've
it's
never
finished in
been
the
sad
rum finished.
with any of the... There's some weird ones
Yeah.
that they finished in peated whiskey and stuff, and they're interesting.
So from
Very
what I heard,
interesting.
because of us nerds, High West isn't doing the rye picks anymore because it was competing too much with the Midwinter's Night Dram. So unfortunately, I hate to say it, like I hope they stick at the 120 price, but I don't know what secondary is. I'm not on secondary. I don't pay attention to it. I'm not cool enough to be part of it or to even try because I don't support it. I pay as close to MSRP as possible. I won't overpay for places. I'll just pass on things.
Right.
But to that point, like I said, I don't know what the MSR or I don't know what the secondary on the Midwinter's Night Dram is. I imagine it was high because at 120 it didn't sit on the shelves. So unfortunately, boo-hoo, it probably is going to go up in price come, the next release. I hope they keep it at 120. I think 120 is a fair price. Right?
Yeah, but that's
it's expensive.
It's also on the high end.
It is
what a fair price.
It is.
Right?
It's absolutely. I think that's at the top end of what I think is fair for what that is.
Right.
Right. If they start releasing like 140, 160, 200, like okay, like at that point it's not really worth what it is. They're just responding to whatever they see the market as being.
And you know what? Any distiller, any respectable business is going to do that. But what I've seen is the trend in the wrong way for a consumer is that, okay, we figured out that you guys will spend $200. Matter of fact, if I put a $2,000 price tag on an allocated BTAC, right, Buffalo Trace antique collection bottle, there's somebody who's going to spend that, and they may turn around and flip that. Now you got to ask yourself, well, why would that be? Well, if somebody's willing to spend $2,000, there's some Yahoo out there that's willing to spend $3,000. That's just a fact. And flippers are only behaving that way because they know they can do it. Because a lot of those prices were driven, I hate to say it, but they were driven by a liquor store. When they go into that liquor store, they already spend an absurd amount of money for a bottle that they probably shouldn't have spent so much on, and they're going to just try to make their money back. And I feel like there's an argument being made that liquor stores are only doing that because there's people flipping bottles. I would like to make the counter argument that the reason we have so many flippers are because we have liquor stores that are selling it for as high as they are. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on that alone. I don't think it's just a one-way system. I think it's a circular loop. It's feeding itself. And unfortunately, me as a whiskey enthusiast, who I actually enjoy drinking the whiskey, I don't buy the whiskey just so it sits and collects dust. Like we're the ones that pay the price, right?
Yeah.
The average drinker, the one that's really looking to enjoy it and have the experience, is ultimately paying the price. It's not the flipper, and you're really not changing that behavior. And that's, I get it, that's my opinion, but really what you're doing is perpetuating that bad behavior, in my opinion. But tell you what, we have one more whiskey in store for you guys, but before we continue on to the next one, which is a store pick, speaking of which, Repeal Batch 6. Good?
That was really
good to go. Yeah,
I really like it. So
not as good as 5.
From my memory, no. 5 is something that absolutely like cripples you when you taste it. Like you cannot visibly not have a reaction from just how good it tastes.
Let me get
I'm gonna rinse it with water real fast. 6, I think it is really, really, really good.
Yeah.
Compared
to the other ones?
For the price tag I paid for
compared to the other ones? Yeah.
So I am less upset with what I paid for this one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I don't know.
Well, what was the retail on this one? Actually,
it was like $80. 90. I think it was like $80.
Okay, so you're probably gauging this.
I'm trying to gauge
it the Remus Repeal batch, right?
Yes.
It's right on that. Yeah, the cusp.
Yep. I think this one is the 6 is probably worth what I paid the $80-$90
mm-hmm.
more than what I paid the nearly $180-$200. I don't quite remember. I know it was over $10 a year.
Yeah.
I think it was like around $200, $210 maybe. I don't quite remember. I know Total Wine is usually a little over MSRP. They don't gouge. But for the allocated stuff, they're never like right on point that they put on the shelves. The stuff they release to their lottery is usually pretty
mm-hmm.
close to MSRP. But the stuff they put on the shelf, they'll mark up a little bit sometimes.
Gotcha.
And I think I paid a little bit extra for that Remus Gatsby.
Okay. Now this one, so the next one we're jumping into is the Remus Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's a single barrel. And it is a pick by our local liquor store Latitudes, who we gave a shout out early on in the video. So here's some details. It is 56.6% ABV, so 113.2 proof. This is a mash of 51% corn, 39 rye, 10% malted rye. And again, this is a local barrel
malted
pick.
rye? Or malted barley? Malted rye.
Excuse me.
Okay, malted
Did
barley.
I say malted?
You did. You said malted rye.
Right.
That happens after a couple whiskeys. So 10% malted rye. Thank
Okay.
you, John. See, he's an eagle eye. Now, it does not tell me, I'm going to double check, what the age statement is. I don't know how old it is, and it doesn't say it on the label. But that's okay. Let me get you going here, John. So this is the highest proof, Remus or MGP that we've had today. I'm excited. We saved maybe the best for last. I don't know. We're going to see if it's better than the Remus, Repeal Batch 6. So let's give this one a try.
I mean, if you're a proof hound, this one is definitely going to hit your barrels a little bit.
I'm getting a little bit of synthetic brown sugar. So some of you guys watching are probably into rum. I am not a big rum fan. And one of the reasons I'm not into rum is because you can put additives, you can put different things into a rum and get away with it. There's really nothing illegal or wrong about it. And not to say that there's been anything added here, but there is a bit of a synthetic.
I feel like this one, I agree, and I feel like it's because the proof is kind of overriding the sense a little bit, right?
Okay.
There's a little bit.
Now that you said that, I'm smelling rum. It smells kind of like a good high proof rum.
Yeah, there's a lot of brown sugar. I get it, but I'm hoping I get a little bit more to it than just brown sugar. It feels a little one-noted,
let it
right?
open up. I blew it, get out some of the vapors.
The nose is very one-noted.
Yeah. I hope it's not a one-trick pony on the palate. And I don't want to take anything away from Latitudes. Whenever you guys do a barrel pick, and for those of you guys watching, some of you may have been part of barrel pick, some of you may not. There's a couple situations where you're going to fall into. Number one is probably the most generic or common type of barrel pick. The brand will send you about 3 different samples. You don't get a say in it. You just get 3 samples. And they'll put it sometimes in just like 3 or 4 ounce bottles. And you're going to have to share it amongst like 3 or 4 people probably and come up with the best, pick amongst the group. A very small group, right? Sometimes you guys will get a much bigger sample. But that's kind of like the common approach that I've seen towards a barrel pick. You get what you get, and you have to pick the best out of what you got. And to me, I feel like, okay, the bigger brands are going to do that. I don't want to take anything away from their process. They probably have a ton of liquor stores or whiskey groups that are trying to get a barrel pick out of that brand. And so there's really not a lot of flexibility to like say, hey, come into our barrel house or warehouse and just start walking around and pick from the distiller's like favorites or something like that.
The big 3, all the guys, they send you 3 samples to pick from.
Yeah, and you get what you get. And
that's it. 4 Roses,
I've
all
seen
those
that.
guys, you get what you get. Some of the smaller guys, you can arrange a tour and actually go around and pick and sample a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But it's typically like the smaller companies.
Yep. Your craft brands.
The new riffs, Starlight.
Yep.
291.
Yeah,
291.
Like
If you're smart, you'll
every
be the guy
small,
with the best palate south of Iceland.
there you go. Every small craft distillery that's not part of like the big 5, I would say.
Right.
Will typically let you in a little bit more, especially if you're bigger. And then they certainly do. If you're just asking them to send you, if you're a small liquor store or club asking them to send you a pick, they're just going to send you 3. That's what everyone does. It's standard. You want us to send you something, we'll send you something. They send you 3 or 5 to pick.
You got something? Well, something?
The first drink I took was kind of like, I was kind of sad. And then I let it sit, smelled it again, tasted it. I'm getting like caramelized banana.
Yeah.
Like a really, really overripe banana.
No, I really like this pick. I think they did a good job on this. So I've talked to Ron at Latitudes. They do just get like the standard 3. You know, I think they get like a 2 ounce. It's like a 2 ounce thing, so you got to pour.
And sometimes they can hold like a little bit of an event. They can have like, I don't know, 20 people.
Well, he's talking about
maybe there's enough to
do things to you know, expand and invite more people in. He said that he's actually turned down barrel picks because he, like, you know, saying he gets 3 samples from the distilleries, and you know, he's actually turned down a couple that, you know, didn't quite hit what they were looking for. So that's why I really do like Latitudes and go to their picks, because they're not just like grabbing whatever, you know, they get sent to them. You know, because no offense to Total Wine, I like Total Wine, they're fine. But the barrel picks that Total Wine do are kind of hit or miss, because there's certainly nobody is tasting those. It's whatever they tell. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they just tell the distillery to send each store whatever, right? And because lots of times on the bottles, I have several bottles from Total Wine that then says Master Distiller's Pick. Right. So it was literally the distiller from the factory or the distiller picked it and sent it to Total Wine.
Yep.
But you guys have some more experience with doing local picks and doing, like, you know, some of the small craft distilleries. So
yeah, Nick, like so when we did the 291 barrel pick, you were there.
Yeah, we went to Colorado Springs to 291 and did a barrel pick over there. That was one of the coolest things I've ever done. That was like a bucket list thing for me to be able to go over there and taste different barrels right out of the barrel. We tried 6, and they actually offered, they're like, if you need more, tell us and we'll bring out more.
Yeah.
Nice. But luckily...
And we tasted literally, and here's why that experience was so different. The master distiller picked 6 of their honey barrels. So it wasn't like, there's some randomness, but they picked the best at the time of what they had.
They probably knew the area. They know golden areas where they're like, hey, let's grab these from this area because this area is ready. This produces good barrels.
Yep, and it was a rye. So we knew we wanted to pick a rye. And then what we were doing was literally thieving from each barrel. Like, and there was... I think there was 6 or 8 of us. 6 or 8 of us.
8 people.
8 of us, right? And you were there, right? We picked a couple. There was a couple of people from the Albuquerque Whiskey Society. You were there, of course, and we were picking. And it's like, okay, so we have out of these 6 barrels, the distiller's like, here you go. And we were literally drinking from the barrel. Totally different experience, because before that product was actually finished, we got to try the whiskey as it is before they did their secondary finishing, which what they do is they add like an aspen stave to every one of their releases, and it's part of their DNA. They put an aspen, or basically it's like a toasted, or I don't think it's charred, but a toasted aspen stave.
Toasted on site in a little barbecue.
Yep, they add 1 or 2 sticks. They put it in a 10-gallon barrel, which is most of what their barrels are.
Barrels.
And that's their finishing process. And I could tell you that, like you said, was a very different experience than just getting like, okay, 3 different samples, you pick the best out of what you think you like, and then that's going to be your barrel.
Were you guys part of the Albuquerque Whiskey Society, the Maker's Mark pick? I know.
Yes, we were.
You're both.
Yeah.
And they just sent like 3 samples for that, right? Or how many did they send?
There were 3 samples, but it was actually 3 bottles. And so there was enough to go around for at least 50, 60 different people, but you had that many different people trying to pick their favorites. And, you know, although my pick wasn't what was selected, the next runner-up was, and
which was my pick.
Which was his pick, and that's why he's the best palate south of Iceland.
Yes.
I'm the best north of Iceland.
So it's very cool seeing like the differences in between, like, you know, the big distillery like Maker's Mark, just like, you know, they were willing to send the bottle,
right?
But it's basically 3 separate samples. Versus, you know, the small guys, some of the small different distilleries, the craft distilleries, will actually give you a tour, will take you around, let you sample a bunch of different bottles.
There's a lot of that too, yes. Yeah. And those are awesome. I want to be part of that too, like a big brand. Let's walk around the warehouse, the distiller or the warehouse manager would say, hey, here's some of our honey barrels. These are the ones that we're going to try out of, and they're going to thieve out of it. For me personally, I think that's the best experience you're going to get is straight from the barrel.
It's cool. Right. It's just a different experience seeing the barrel right there than with a thief taking some out right into your Glencairn and
yeah. Now, okay, so we're kind of pressed for time at this point. I know we've talked a lot about Remus, MGP, everything. Yeah, we've really talked about everything. And the battery's about to die. So we're going to try to wrap up now at this point. And if you guys are still watching, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I'm going to do a quick couple shout outs. So definitely want to do a quick shout out to all the Patreons. Thank you guys for supporting. Actually, these guys are my Patreons, so I definitely love you guys for being a big part of the Whiskey One family. If you guys are still tuned in and you're checking us out and want to hear our thoughts about what we have to say, I certainly appreciate you guys continuing to come to the channel time and time again. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, definitely consider doing so. It means a lot to me and it helps the channel grow and become bigger and better. Before we wrap up, these were what I think of as solid, categorically MGP, but also like bourbon. When I think of bourbon, these are the tastes and aromas and the flavor profile I think of when it comes to bourbon. I know we tried different Remuses, all different batches and different releases, and I personally enjoyed them. I'm pretty sure you guys enjoyed them too. But it was nice to talk through that and really share with you guys, not only just doing like a review of these different Remuses, but our take about where whiskey is going in the grand scheme of things. So hopefully you enjoyed watching us, and we had a great time doing it. I know I had some fun, and I appreciate you guys coming.
It was good. Trying the Remuses all together like that was nice.
Yeah.
I feel like all of them are definitely fit well in their price point and what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
From entry level to barrel proof to a high end offering and a limited release, they're doing a good job. They fit the bill for what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously a fan.
I don't have no stock.
Well, he's got shares in it, which I didn't know before we started this video. So full disclosure, I had no idea. And
I thought I told you before.
I thought you told what? Well, you didn't. I don't remember.
He doesn't listen to half the things I say, so it's alright. He just loves me for my bourbon.
You sound like my wife. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm gonna leave with this one note. What was your favorite of what we tasted tonight? And that goes for both of you guys. Do you have a favorite? Is it like having children? You can't pick one?
I think even though I shouldn't because it was the most expensive one, that Gatsby, just that funky mustiness, you don't get that unless it's an old bourbon. Like it's just a rare flavor profile that's nice, and you can't make it any other way. There's no way to finish something, to recreate it, to do nothing. You have to age. So
yeah, no, I agree with your point about the age. It's like you can definitely always taste age. Age comes across as a certain thing that you can't necessarily always put your finger on, but because depending on the barrel, depending on the environment, the age may come across differently. But it's always something that's there, right, that you can't reproduce in any way. That being said, I really love this new pick I got from Latitudes. I think it stands out. It is freaking phenomenal. And because of the price I paid for it, I think I paid like $65 for this one. It is freaking, I mean, I do like the Gatsby more. I do think it is better.
Okay.
But it's only by like a little bit. Right. It's only
so this is the Gatsby. Which one is it?
Which one's better? I think the Gatsby's better, but which one I love more? I love the Remus, this barrel pick more, just because of the value of it. You know?
And I like that banana runs thing it has going on, kind of.
It's got a little, weird, funky fruitiness thing. It's hard for me. It was hard to put my finger on, but yeah, now that you bring it runs, yeah, it's. I think I went into this kind of mentioning there's a bit of a synthetic flavor going on, and obviously these guys didn't put anything artificial in it. But as far as like my favorite, it has to be the Remus Repeal Batch 6.
The 6.
I feel like it had
The proof point is just right on that.
Proof point, it was balanced. It just kind of did it for me. There was a little bit of everything in it, and it really did it for me. I feel like with this barrel pick, I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy it. Like, this will get you there. If anything, we almost should have started
there fast.
Started with this.
Yeah, we almost should have started with this one. All right, folks. So thanks again for joining us here today, and we really appreciate all the love and the support. Here at Whiskey One, it's about the one you enjoy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.